Hello, my name is Anna Torres, and I am a fellow student at the University of North Texas. I am also in organized crime, as you guys are, and will be presenting my online presentation today on the topic that I chose, which I'd like to keep a mystery for now when I'm through with my introduction. So first, I'd like to define organized crime. Um, we've been through the semester, so I think we have a strong understanding on what that looks like. But I'd like to use the definition that Merriam-Webster defined it as, and they stated that organized crime is a group of professional criminals who work together as a part of powerful and secret organizations. Now we know it goes way deeper than that, so I wanted to find the definition the FBI also chose, which was the FBI defines it as a group of individuals who operate for the purpose of obtaining power, influence, and monetary and commercial gains, wholly or in part by illegal means, while protecting their activities through a pattern of corruption and violence. I could not think of a better illustration of what an organized crime group looks like than a gang. The reason for that is because I feel like many times when we think of organized crime, we think of the mob or we think of the mafia or the cartel, which is definitely perfect illustrations of what organized crime looks like. But I think that here in the U.S., we have a more vivid depiction of organized crime through the gangs that are currently just kind of taken over in our low-income neighborhoods. So today I chose to illustrate the structure and organization of MS-13. And the reason why I chose that is because I feel like I have a lot of family that live in the DMV area. And for those of you that don't know, that's Delaware, Maryland, and Virginia. In that area, the MS-13 is really gained a lot of traction and a lot of news coverage. It is something that determines where, certain members of my family decide they want to live, the different school systems that they want to put their children in. It is something that is really, affected my family in a certain way. So I wanted to go ahead and illustrate kind of what they are, who they are, kind of how they came about to be, and just kind of shed light on some of the effects that it's had on the community there. So first, I'd like to talk about where it all kind of began. MS-13 originated in Los Angeles in the 1980s. Los Angeles is actually referred as the Vatican to the MS-13. It's just kind of the place where it all kind of began. Now, through my research, I found that a lot of people disagreed with that and found that the gangs actually that were created long before then, but they didn't cultivate themselves nor name themselves until they got to Los Angeles. And the reason for that is that there was a civil war in El Salvador, and this caused a large migration into the United States by native Salvadorians. And through that, I guess one of the quotes that I really found that kind of illustrated it best, they were living in a cultural and economic disadvantage, often neglected by their parents or particularly hostile environment. Many migrants found identity and peer support in gangs, later as an outcome of growing Salvadorian population. So the MS-13 is mainly or originated and is still currently ran majorly by Salvadorians. And this just came about as, we all know the effects of immigration. They're very tough. So when they came over to our country and they had, they faced a lot of local gangs that were already in that community. Those gangs paired with just not enough opportunities cause the youth of these immigrants to join these or come together as a gang, I guess you could say, to kind of bring some camaraderie and protection through that. So we see that the word Mara actually means gang in, for Central Americans. Salva is a just a short term for Salvadorian, and 13 was chosen because the M is the 13th letter of the alphabet. Now, you might be thinking, how did young immigrants of the Salvadorian descent, create such a large gang? Something that we know now is transnational, is what they like to call it. People are referring to gang members as terrorists, which is such a heavy word. I found that in the late 2000s, what ended up happening is that there was more of a crackdown on immigration, much like we're seeing today. And so a lot of MS-13 gang members were sent back to El Salvador through these deportations. So a lot of them, which had been pretty much American, because many of them grew up here in the United States, had already been here for years and years and years, were not familiar with El Salvador. Were not familiar. Some of them didn't even speak Spanish. Were sent back to what was supposed to be their native land, that they did not recognize. So much like, that alienation and feeling like, hey, we don't know, we don't belong here. They went back with that same camaraderie and were able to multiply their membership through that, because they took MS-13 now to their native land, to where it all began, or not necessarily began, but it was already within them, so they were able to multiply it. They not only multiplied it in the streets of El Salvador, a lot of them, because they weren't known to local authorities, they had no criminal background with El Salvador, they were able to easily, start up and harbor gang members. Not just that, but the ones that ended up going into jail were able to cultivate more membership in the jail system. So little by little, they became international. And so they went into, I believe I found it was 67,000 members were in Central America. This is in the early 2000s. So think about that. We went from 1980 to the 2000s. Now we have 67,000 in general in the Central America area. I found the breakdown of that looked like 37,000 in Honduras, 17,000 in El Salvador, and 14,000 in Guatemala. This is not including the impact that they have here in the United States. We have many news stories going out of Washington, D.C., and seeing the effects of the violence and just the way that they are known, and they're brutal. They are a brutal gang. So again, we'll go ahead and kind of transition into the membership and what that kind of looks like, which we did read about a bit in our textbook. But in order to join the MS-13, you'll have initiation beatings. A lot of times, for many other gangs, that is all that is needed to kind of initiate you and bring you in to be a part of the brotherhood. It is not the minimum requirement for an MS-13 member. MS-13 wants to be known as a brutal and known as such a how could I put it? I guess a very brutal gang. So because of that, an initiation beating is simply not enough. You have to prove that you're worthy, that you're willing to go above and beyond to make sure that you're in the gang. So along with the initiation beating, you also have to prove that you are able to rape and kill. Many times there will be an initiation killing that they'll have you do, or an initiation rape that you'll have to do. These are just some small requirements that are asked of you if you want to be a member of MS-13, okay? In all organized crime, of course, there has to be structure. Just like our criminal justice system is structured, just like our policing system is structured, you have to have structure within organized crime, of course. That's why it's called organized crime. So we'll go through kind of how MS-13 is organized and just kind of the hierarchy of that. Okay, so first there's cliques. Cliques are different sets in the U.S. So different sets of MS-13 members. That's just going to pretty much illustrate just different groups that are located in different areas that have certain territories, okay? The leader of these cliques is called Primera Palabra, which means first word in English. And these leaders are in charge of making sure that the members that they have are staying on top of their members, making sure that the MS-13 rules are being followed, that you know, they are able to or kind of hold down a territory, and make sure that all the organized crime that comes with that, the drug dealing, the drug trafficking, the human trafficking is in order. Underneath that person is a segunda palabra, which is or second word in English. This is just kind of your vice president. So if your primera palabra goes to jail, you need to have somebody in place to kind of make sure that everything continues to run smoothly. Okay, after that you have just your soldiers, and this is just a very generic kind of breakdown of the hierarchy. Throughout some research, I was able to find that there are people that are in charge of finances. There are assassins that are labeled that way, that their specific job is to kill, you know, to have targeted kills and things like that. And unfortunately, what ends up happening is that because there's such, I guess, camaraderie between these groups, it's very extremely difficult actually to find the structure in a lot of things that they do, because they know that anyone that betrays or does anything where they're informing the police or the criminal justice system of how their organization works, they know that those people are out, they're killed. So a lot of the information that I did find was through informants. Now, with that being said, there's a lot of things that change because they don't want the police to know exactly how they run their organizations. They want to be 3 steps ahead of the police. They don't necessarily, you know, want that to be public information. And anything that is public information, it is typically because they want it to be. They want to send a message through the types of killings that they do, or even the members that they have in jail. They want them to see that, or they want us to see as a public, or that nothing can stop them, not even jail. They can work out of jail, they can work out in the public, however, okay? So that leads me kind of to the violence that we've seen throughout the years coming from the MS-13. Of course, like many organized crime groups, what you'll see is that betrayal is kind of the biggest offense that you could do to their organization. And so for those killings, they typically have a more embellished way of killing you. So it is not rare for you to hear about an MS-13 killing that had someone killed and stabbed 100 times, decapitated, will take their heart out. Things like that kind of are overkill. You know that probably by just stabbing somebody once in the right place that they're dead. But they want to send a message to anyone that's considering to cooperate or to I guess, I don't know, combat them in some sort of way, that they're unstoppable and they're ruthless, that they will go after you, your family, whoever it takes to make sure that you know the power that they have and the influence that they have. I read a story about a story about a young man that was lured to a park. Again, it's just the overkill type situation. It's very sad. He was stabbed 100 times, decapitated, all this because he owed $600. So there's not much that you can do in order to receive this type of I guess, treatment from the MS-13. You just have to oppose them or owe them in any kind of way, and they'll go after you. Okay, so I found that the motto that they have is kill, rape, and control. So, of course, like I said, the killings depict just that. They want to make sure that that they're in control, that there's nothing that you can do about it, and that it's either join them or get out their way, pretty much. What I found that through research is how we're combating this, specifically now that immigration is such a large topic. Of course, you have Donald Trump promising that we're going to kind of go back to those harsh immigration push-outs of these illegal immigrants. And so, excuse me, he's vowed to just do away with members of the MS-13 that are here, to deport them, which is kind of different because here in the U.S. we want to deport them, as to where in El Salvador and the places that they're going to, they're being killed. It's a different strategy that the government there is using. It's just kind of an eye for an eye kind of thing. So unfortunately, through just research and watching documentaries, a lot of the members of MS-13 are not concerned by deportation because they know that we're sending 5 back and they're going to send 15. They're not intimidated by the government, the way that they control their own country, and knowing that they can come here and intimidate and just about use any illegal tactic to be able to multiply their membership. It's just not an effective strategy, is what I found, to kind of end that organized crime group. So also, another thing that I found about deportation that kind of did not help the movement of getting rid of MS-13 was that because immigration is such an important, or I guess something that's being pushed big time by our media, is that it has caused fear of victims and even witnesses to come forward because now they are afraid of deportation. Instead of standing up to these people that are, I guess, bringing intimidation to them, they feel as though the police now is also somebody that they cannot rely on. And the MS-13 uses this as a tactic to bring about more fear and violence to a lot of low-income neighborhoods. So things such as recruitment is something that's much higher now because they know that people are not going to run to the police. They're not going to run to the I guess the criminal justice system to kind of bail them out of situations like this because they're afraid. Another tactic that I found that we're using to combat the MS-13 is cutting off their finances. One of the things that I didn't touch on, but I do touch on briefly in my research paper, is that a big way that the MS-13 operates, of course, is through financial abilities. They not only do they drug deal, drug traffic, they do human trafficking, prostitution, all of those things. And what they did is that they went into these places that were already established organized crime groups, and they were able to tax them. And of course, as a drug dealer or as a brothel operator, you're not going to run to the police and tell them, hey, these people are trying to get money out of my illegal business. So it was a perfect market for the MS-13 to be able to go into places that were already established and start profiting off of them. So through taxation means. So of course the U.S. is trying to find ways to kind of cut off the resources. And I found that the Treasury Department aims to shut down MS-13's financial operations that are obviously very sophisticated. The action positions us to target the associates and financial networks supporting MS-13 and gives law enforcement an additional tool in its efforts to disrupt it. So the idea is if we cut the money, that we're able to kind of cut the head off of the business, make sure that the money's not flowing, make sure that if there's no cash flow, that we're able to kind of bring out these criminals into the light and be able to detain them, and deport them. Okay. So in conclusion, I pretty much found that MS-13 is not a force you want to be reckoned on. In fact, even when I was recording this video and researching it, I knew kind of how delicate this subject is, and how, again, it's affected many members of even my family members that I know deal with these kind of dangers in the DMV area. So I guess the challenge is for us as criminal justice majors to kind of continue to study up on subjects like these and figure out how legislation can kind of come up with better strategies to end things like the gang movement. And I think a lot of it has to do with funding and just a different immigration model that can help us, not let immigrants feel alienated to the point where they have to go to illegitimate means to kind of make a living. Find a way that we can have a balance of securing our borders, but also allowing the immigrants that are here in the United States, that have been here in the United States, an opportunity to become legitimate and become, I guess, operating members of society. So that's it. Thank you.